It's a pleasure to moderate this session on such an important day, that's International Women's Day. So I would like to once again say a happy Women's Day to everyone who identifies as a woman. I'd like to just go straight into the conversation, first by saying a welcome to our panelists, some of whom I'm meeting for the first time and some of whom I know personally. So I'm sure this is going to be an interesting conversation. I'm going to throw my first question out there. With the title of the conversation and also the theme for this year's Women's Day is Breaking the Bias. And I'm kind of happy that the word gender isn't in there, because it opens up the conversation and brings a lot to mind. And also something that I have been reflecting on today is the bias that exists within being a woman, not only from the external sources, but what are the biases that are preventing us from, reaching our heights. So first, let me ask anyone who is ready to answer, what are the things that you have experienced when it comes to the bias in the industry that you find yourself? So anyone who's ready to, or should I call someone? Okay, then I'll just like to start with you, Apioko.
As I mentioned earlier, I belong to two main industries. Of course, the media and the arts, and really, they come full circle to be one big mishmash at some point. Now, I have experienced several biases. I started working actively in the media in 2014, right? Now, I entered at a time just when it was becoming okay and possible for women to have a family and to have a career at the same time. Prior to that, you almost couldn't because it's male-dominated, still is, but much more so back then. And the men you work with will not understand if you're going on maternity leave for 3 months. They don't understand. They don't understand that labor law says a pregnant woman cannot work beyond 10 p.m. So if you're on a shift that takes you to 1 a.m. or brings you in at 3 a.m. and some concessions need to be made, they don't understand that. So I entered the media at a time when some women had broken the bias and had done that. Now, unfortunately, at the time, it meant that those women had to bow out at a point. I also entered at a time when anybody who was called a producer in Ghana, save one or two people, they were all men. So you're having production meetings and you're leading a team, and what are you talking about? Why is a woman doing that? Now, I was lucky to meet people like Akosia Hansen, who are already in the media, and they led that. She was breaking the bias in almost every way possible in that field at the time. Now, in poetry, our poetry space is still very much dominated by men. And one of the things that makes that the case is because, look at the time we're here. A lot of young women in Ghana, their parents would not allow them out at this time, much less to go and stand on a stage and speak words. So what are you talking about? Go to school, get a proper job, But I was lucky to have met men in the space who broke the bias and understood that special care needed to be taken. So they would help you sort your transportation, make sure you're okay. If it meant even speaking to your parents to let them know where you were and that you're okay, or opening up the event so that it's a safe space for parents and caregivers to come, they would do that. Now, on the end of my parents, I was lucky. As my parents, my mom, for example, who's 70 this month, wanted to be a dancer and an artist, and my grandfather, who was a lawyer, said only prostitutes do that. And we're talking about this happening in the 60s, in Ghana. So she had always felt like she had lost out on something big. And she kept telling us when we were growing up that, look, you can do whatever you want. And dressing in a certain way, dyeing your hair a certain way, having a certain number of piercings, wearing anklets, all those things, they don't make you a bad girl. They don't make you any less intelligent. And anyone who thinks so, you should tell them that you are not. So those are some of the experiences that I've had, both, putting it very briefly, but it was not easy. It was not easy. And prior to going into media even, I was teaching. And my supervisors would tell me that I shouldn't wear my piercing, like my earrings, or dye my hair to go to class, or even wear a certain height of shoes. And I either go barefooted or I'm doing 6-inch heels. It's one or the other, very flat or very high. And they say, well, you're spoiling the girls. You're giving them a wrong impression of life. And I said, I was dressing nicely and expressing yourself in a literature class, telling the girls that they should be bad girls. But those are some of the things that I experienced throughout, my journey to get here. And I'm sure the other ladies have a lot to say.
Yeah, I'd like to hear now from Ivy and Dapper Queen, your experience with the bias.
I'm probably the opposite of you. It's been an interesting journey for me, especially because obviously you can see I am not the heel type, but unlike you, I'm a bit of a rogue when it comes to, and so it was, my mom stopped, well, she learned it the hard way. By age 8, she knew not to buy me clothes without my consent, because I won't wear them. And then at a very early stage, well, my dad also liked for me to look funky like him, so I grew up pairing. We had a lot of clothes together, so if he was buying sneakers, he bought the smaller version for me. So I grew up that way. And then at a point, my dad had to leave. And when it was just my mom, now she was struggling because it was her trying to change me and to get me to wear dresses, and me saying, nah, Dad was cool with it, so you best be cool with it. And so, yeah, she had to start buying things with my consent and making sure that, because then I won't wear them. And then I think she thought I'd grow out of it. And so by high school, I still wasn't growing out of it. She was like, one day she sat me down, she bought a small shoe for my little sister, and she said, I'm just trying to make sure she doesn't turn out like you. And I found that really weird. But it wasn't too difficult growing up because my mom was quite open-minded. She was still very strict and all that, but she was quite open-minded. But it hit me when I finished school and wanted a job. And that was when my woes started, because I think after my national service, for about a year or a year and a half, maybe 2 years, I wasn't getting a job. And it wasn't because, I had done my national service with the University of Ghana. I had worked with Metro TV for various internships. I had experience, and people would usually say, I used to work for my university when I was in school for media monitoring. So I did a lot of articles and stuff on Obama and Atta Mills at the time. And so it wasn't like I didn't have the experience they were looking for. Then someone sat me down and said, it's your dressing, Ivy. You need to start wearing dresses and heels. And I said no. So at a point, it confused me, because here I was trying to wear what society expects and not feeling comfortable. So I would probably do a jeans and try to look for a blouse that looks a bit girly, so that it's not so obvious that I don't like it and I'm not comfortable in it. So that went on for a while. Then a friend of mine said, you can actually just not mind anybody and just be you, and just make sure that you do it so well that they really don't have anything to say. There's no flaw. So that's what I decided to do. So hence my quote-unquote rebranding into not just doing too casual, that makes people think that you're not serious. You come off, especially because, I mean, you're in the corporate world. So at a point, you need to look a certain way. So hence the birth of Dapper Queen. And now I get a lot of young people hitting me up. Yo, I'm not getting a job. They said I won't get a job if I don't wear heels. And I can't wear it. And me on the daily trying to tell them how I went about it. The truth is, imagine having, I mean, most women have to work 5 times harder than the man to get to where they are. And you, as a non-conforming, when it comes to fashion, has to work 10 times more because really already you look weird. And even the women are looking at you weird. I've had instances where HRs have tried to base my KPIs on how I look, and me having to. I think one of the things for me has been confidence. I am so grateful for that because I will tell you to your face that, listen, I'm here for the job, and I look good, and I'm fine. So you best let me do my job and let's move on. I think those are some of the things that I've had to deal with. It's been wild, but yeah.
Thank you for bringing up your experience. I'm particularly interested in the dynamics between your mom and your dad, and it goes back to my point of the bias also existing within our gender. But let's hear from DJ Ghana Boy. And
Hi everyone, my name is GH Boy or Ghana Boy. I am a DJ, obviously, and I guess some ways that I've experienced the bias, especially in this industry, I think we can all say it's pretty much run by male, like guys, and because of how dominating it is, breaking into the industry as a woman on its own is one of the very tough things. And I found myself moving back last year. Initially I was based in Beijing, and I started my DJing over there. And funny enough, there are a few differences that I could point out in terms of how their society embrace female DJs and females in creative spaces and females in arts, and how our society here does the same. And the differences are quite in your face. One of them, for me, has definitely been the pay. All right, let me just put it bluntly. When it comes to how much women are paid in the industry as DJs, I can speak from some experience to note that it's different from what the guys are being paid. And you could argue that if you're now entering and if you're starting, this is like the beginner wage or the entry level pay. But as time has gone on and as you prove yourself as a female DJ, as you make your mark, you get your props, you would think that that should change. However, it hasn't really been like that for me. I'm still struggling to drive that point across, that in as much as in the beginning, I would have accepted it because that's what I needed to do to get some exposure. I feel I've paid my dues, and so it should reflect. And so that's one thing. Another thing, obviously, is as a female DJ, I don't know why a lot of guys feel once you're in this space, they have a certain hold over you, or they know more than you, or, it's a male-dominated industry, so there's just this inclination for them to just want to help you, and that's not a bad thing, obviously, but sometimes it comes off as condescending and very kind of down-putting. So I've had to deal with that as well, and I feel like if I had come from wherever as a DJ, if I was a guy, it would not be the same, at least how it is and how it feels, definitely. What I remember from earlier today is there's this video by What Woman, which is a female collective that puts on female creatives and promotes them, supports them. They put out a video earlier today in honor of International Women's Day and in collaboration with Pioneer DJ. And one of the very first responses as to why aren't there enough female DJs in Accra was, believe it or not, it's a man's job. And this was coming from an average, just someone in the street, just a regular Ghanaian person. This is how the mindset is set up. It's that this industry is for the guys. So as a woman, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And more female DJs have kind of gone against the grain. Today in Accra, you're seeing more and more female DJs, and they're kind of competing with the guys. So it just disproves that point that it's for guys. There's nothing that's limited to one gender. And that's why I chose my name, GH Boy, to kind of dispel that relevance of what a guy should be doing and what a girl or a woman should be doing. And so far, it's worked out for me. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I'd now like us to hear from Isinam.
Hello. Hi, everyone. For me, I'd say, okay, I don't have a lot of experience because I'm young, obviously. But I think for me, we'll start from the point where you are asked that, oh, what are you going to the university to study? And then you say painting and sculpture. And everybody's looking like you, hey, painting and sculpture. Like, you did visual arts. If you're a lady, you should do designing, you should go into fashion. So already, your mind is gone on going to study painting and sculpture. And then you get to class, and then the population of female to male in the class is already triggering. Like, it's telling you that, can you make it? Then, of course, you start working, and then you have to work with knowledge from your previous institution. And for those of us who went to single-sex schools, sometimes it's unfortunate that we didn't take some of the lessons that we were supposed to take. So immediately you get to class, you see the difference in the kind of works you are producing. So it was really a struggle for me. I had to do extra because I was lacking in a lot of skills because I didn't take some of those lessons in my school. Not because I intentionally, it was not available. There was no teacher to teach that in a girls' school. So already there's a deficiency from secondary school to tertiary. Then we start working. I was troubled every day, every blessed day. I used to stand in front of the mirror and ask myself, hey, am I going to this class? And every time I come, I used to cry. So I decided that there was no way I was going to get out of it. I had to make it work. So I found a few people in my class, guys, who were good at painting. So I did this. I said, let's do a barter trade. If we have to do a presentation or study slides and get ready or write some papers down, I can do it for you. You have to take time and teach me how to paint. And then some of them agreed. So I set a timetable, 8 p.m. at night. They come to my room. I get them food. And then I do their assignments for them. And they teach me how to paint. And it was solely that at every 8 p.m. And that is how I got to the top of the class, that at least from first year, you won't hear anyone mention Esinam's name. But by the time I got to third year, if they were going to mention 5 people from my class, my name had to come up. And it had to take work. There were times that I had to chase the guys that, hey, it's 8 p.m., you have to teach me paint. And they are like, I'm not available, I'll wait for you. So yeah, then you move forward and there are no role models to look up to. Of course, painting and sculpture, who are you going to look up to? So you have to find a way. I just had to find a way. The only female in my department that studied what I studied was also a lecturer. So now she was doing more writing. So she was practicing, Dr. Mrs. Amenuke. So a few times I used to go to her office and speak to her about, and she was like, oh, just do what you want to do. And now you finish with school and your family is asking you, what are you doing after school with your painting and sculpture certificates, first class? What the bedding? And then my national service posting, I got there and the director said, you studied painting and sculpture. What are you coming to do at research? We don't have space for you. And I told him the fact that I studied painting and sculpture doesn't mean I don't know anything about research. I did research in third year and final year. So whoever you put there to do that job, I can equally do that job. Put me to a test for at least a month or two. If I cannot do it, tell the school that I didn't make it and then let me go. Unfortunately, I did the work. So he couldn't sack me. And then when I had to leave, a lot of people realized that I was more of a practical person. So a lot of times, aside the research I was doing other things for the school. I was working at Accra Technical University then. So now, national service is over. You have to find a job. You have to eat. Yeah. And you don't have a studio space first as an artist. So what kind of works are you going to produce? And it also became a problem. For a female, you can't just leave your parents' house and say that you are going to rent and then leave. They'll ask you so many questions. You're not ready to leave the family house and all of those things, but they won't also give you the space to start a studio to produce your work. So I think that the whole system is messed up. Yeah, that's how I put it. But of course, every time you work and you put in the work, people see you. But the thing about us women, the thing is that if you're a woman and you're putting in extra work, people don't like to commend you. Yeah, they'll just see you from the side and say, when they have conversation, they'll say, oh, this girl, she's trying. Yeah, but if it was a man, they will, hey, this guy be hard guy. Never a hard girl. Yeah, so I think there was a job. Ibrahim wanted to start SCCA, of course, and then he was looking for people in the community that could work with him. But it was also important that the person understood arts in a way that we were going to be able to build a community, because it's not only about individuality. And it was evident during my stay in school that every time there was an event or any time someone had an exhibition, I only wanted to volunteer and do something for them. Even if I don't do anything, I'll say, oh, let me give your letters to someone for you on my way back, and I pay for my transportation and I do all that. So some way, somehow, a few lecturers recommended me, and then some friends recommended me. So when I was called that, oh, we want you to come to Temale to do this. I'm like, hey, Temale, no, I don't think I can leave my family. And it came up. My family was like, hey, you're a girl, Lou. Why are you going to Temale? You don't know anyone there. How are you going to live life? I'm like, if I was a boy, I say you let me go. Abi. So staying at home, Charlie, money is not coming soon. They said, well, you might as well go, and then let's see what comes out of it. And then, yeah, that's how we birthed Savannah Center for Contemporary Art. But when it started, a lot of times, Ibrahim was out of the country, so I had to do everything together. Be manager, be coordinator, send letters to media houses, call everyone, create a board. They only send you the number. You have to talk to the people and convince them to make it to the place. And that is how it has been. But I also think that I've been able to do all of these things and starting SCCA with Ibrahim because I'm a woman. I'm a woman. Because ejumane dosu is plenty. You have to multitask. And whilst I think that it's only possible because I'm a woman, because, yeah, that's it.
You're almost answering the question I had for you, so I prepared a question for each person.
Then
here.
that's it.
No.
Thank you for coming.
We will stay with you a bit longer. Your work at SCCA, from my point of view, it looks like you work with a lot of men. So I really want you to talk about the dynamics and how you are able to break the bias. You know, many of these men may be coming from the traditional way of thinking and looking at women. And your role is a very integral role to making sure that there's progress within SCCA. So you have someone like Ibrahim who trusts you enough to take up that role. But then there are people who might be looking at you, and the mere fact that you're a woman, it just creates a stumbling block for you, and they create issues for you. So how have you been able to, take the authority and take the authority and work with the men, and also how do you feel about being one of the only few women within the space? I know there are other women, but then when it comes to the, I don't want to say top positions because every role is important, but when it comes to certain significant roles that make decisions, it looks like you are the only woman there. So how do you, play around this?
Okay, first, for those who don't know what SCCA is, the Savannah Center for Contemporary Art is an art institution that runs exhibitions and workshops up north in Tamale. So our aim is to create or make spaces where people can learn about art, or a lot of Ghanaians can show their art, and also for children to learn about art. Yeah, very important, the children. Elizabeth's question is plenty. Yeah, but I'll take it one at a time. Charlie. So, I'm the only girl working with almost 5 to 6 men. The other lady is a librarian, and she comes from Tamale. So there's the thing of, cultural shock. Sometimes you get to places and then the things they do shock, like it will shock you. I got to Tamale and then I started working with someone who was taking care of the place. So I went in March when we opened first, and then I had to run home and come and pack my things and come back. So someone was running the place briefly. And then I got back and then I tried to put things in order, and then they tell you, this place, we don't do things like that. We are working. What is we don't do things like that? For the first month, Charlie, it was everyday fights. Why are you talking to me like that? You're a small girl. And women don't talk to men like that in this part of our place. Charlie. It was difficult. And then Ibrahim was not around. So who are you going to report to? You have to find a way. So I had to learn to say a lot of sorries, not because I was wrong, but because I wanted things to work. I didn't also want it to be that they left the thing for you and you spot it, and they'll say that women, dear, when you leave something in their care, you come and meet fights. Yeah, so it was the situation. But we still have that tension sometimes, that when we have to do something, and I said, I think this thing won't work. And then it's all men. Sometimes it's not intentional. They'll just like, women, dear, they are like that. Like, sometimes it's subtle, but it speaks volumes. So I just had to find ways to speak to them. Sometimes when we are in meetings and some of these things happen, I just keep quiet. And then after the meeting, I meet Ibrahim separately and tell him that don't joke like that. When you are not around, they would try to make such jokes at me. it's not nice. Or sometimes I tell him in the meeting, don't do that, please. Sometimes it doesn't sound good, of course. But over the time, I've found ways to deal with them. The other thing is, aside a thing being, maybe we'll say a manly thing, all these people have their individualities. And you have to take your time to understand the angle from which they are coming. So the gentleman that I said I used to have a lot of issues with, we used to eat together when I came because we like to do a lot of community things. So when you come into our space at SCCA, you don't know who is director, you don't know who is what, until maybe there's time to work. So I can cook, director can cook, and we all sit at a table and eat. But the guy who came to meet there doesn't do that. He doesn't sit to eat with women. So I was cooking. When I cook, he'll go and take his plate and dish his food separately. You didn't cook the food. You didn't buy the ingredients. So why are you dishing separately? I was watching him for some time, and I said no. So I confronted him. I was like, you have to eat with all of us because I think the food is not enough, and we are trying to be economical. So we all have to eat together. No, this place, men don't eat with women. And I said, okay, if men don't eat with women, men who don't pay for the food too cannot eat food that women paid for. So he realized that, okay, somehow he was wrong. I sat down and told him that if we are working as a community, we have to put some of these things aside. It was difficult for him. Like, for 1 month, he wasn't eating. But a comedy burger. Yeah, so after some time, he found a way. Sometimes it's difficult, but I think as women, we need to understand that some of these biases, they are coming from a point of maybe sometimes it's culture, sometimes it's fear, sometimes they're just trying to protect themselves. A lot of times we are in a rush to defend ourselves. Hey, you are being this way, you are trying to force a woman to hide in her corner. I understand that sometimes I do that, sometimes the things get me by surprise and then I act. And then later I think, oh, you should have addressed it this way. I think that generally, of course, we all have biases, but we need to be able to sit back and analyze that some of these things are individually. And for all you know, some of these people that do some of these things, they picked it up when they were kids, and it's no fault of theirs. Do you understand? So sometimes we need to be able to understand them before we let them know that what they are doing is wrong, and this is the way to go about it. It's not easy, but I mean, at least it's a good step to start with.
Thank you for that. Someone will be wondering, I mean, why ponder on the issue of food when we are trying to build institutions? But if people of different genders cannot agree on how to eat, you can imagine when it's time to make really huge decisions, the difficulties that women would face. And so I think it's important for us to identify the little things that are the problem and how they, build up to create a bigger issue. I'd like to come to you, Apioko. You have been in the, I would like to say, creative industry for some time. And you rightly mentioned that at the time you were starting, there were not many women. So I really want to pick your mind on your thoughts on how the industry has grown. Are there some biases that have been able to be broken down? And your thoughts on if we still need more women in certain roles like production, editing, and those roles that are still seen as too technical for women?
Oh, absolutely. In my time working in the media, and I do work with one of the leading media houses in Ghana, and I head programs production, right? In my time doing this work, I've never worked with a female technician. I've worked with only one female audiovisual editor.
Till date?
Till date, yes. And I've worked with only one female camera operator. The rest are men. And that has been something else. because imagine you're sitting down, you're developing concepts, and now you go into a meeting and you're trying to get all the people on the team to understand what you're doing. And straight away, they don't want to listen in some cases. And a lot of it is very cultural. You have people who are coming from certain parts of the country who've been raised a certain way. They don't take instructions from women, let alone say, okay, I will do this. Taking the instruction is a problem. Well, now, even voicing it is a bigger issue. I must say, though, that I do have a CEO who, we like to joke and say that he's more woman than man. And a lot of our heads, in fact, my line manager for the longest time, in fact, just until about 2 months ago, was a woman. So I walked in and I had this one, Jessica Paris-Aforo. So she had been in the industry for so long and literally held my hand. Okay, and just moving on from that, now you've come to a place where City TV, you watch it, and we say it's run by women because out of the 8 television directors we have, 5 of them are women, and they're young women. But it wasn't so when we began. It was a deliberate effort. We realized that certain aesthetics that we wanted, certain art direction that we wanted, a certain voice that we wanted to come through our presenters, we wouldn't get it unless we had women in the director's seat. So it was a deliberate effort to do that. Now, our HR manager and her assistant are women. Our head of news currently is a woman. And so even the stories and the way they are told, you can feel the woman's touch, if you think about it now, maybe go and watch some of the things, you understand where I'm coming from. But it hasn't been easy to get here. I remember, for example, when the head of news, Vivian, took up her position, about 50% of her regional correspondents resigned because they said she was talking to them harshly. Now, what was the issue? You're supposed to produce at that time at least 2 stories a day from wherever you were in the bureau across the country. Of course, Accra, the newsroom this is a hub, but across the country, each reporter, each correspondent had to produce 2 stories a day. They were used to Yankonkwa, whatever we want to do, however we feel, whenever we're ready to produce a story about my ladies, whenever we're ready to produce a story about Alliance Française, then we'll do it. But this woman says, no, there are structures. And news is largely time-bound. There's a reason why we say things like dead news. Sometimes news dies if you don't get it out at a certain point in time. And they had issues with that. Now, why is it that the person before you who was a man never gave us pressure? But as for you, you are giving us pressure.
I want to cut in here and ask, the people who were having the issues, were they majority men or there were also some ladies?
There were a couple of women in there. And in fact, to answer that specific question, I remember one woman saying once that, Sa woman, she has like Oniba, and she doesn't have children, that's why she's behaving like that. Do you get it? Stereotypes. But this is a woman who, in many respects, has sacrificed. Remember what I said in the beginning about women who have had to sacrifice either career or family to pave the way for us. She's one of those women. And so she didn't marry very early. She's married now, has a very supportive husband. But this is also somebody who, when she goes home, she may not have children in terms of people, but she runs a fashion business. So, and she makes handmade bags, literally cutting leather in the middle of the night. That's her side gig. Of course, they don't know that. So in their minds, this woman goes home, goes to sleep, and then she's giving us pressure to do work that is unreasonable. Now, personally, and I took up the head of programs productions role, a lot of the people in my department are young. City hires young. Our philosophy is that young people have something to prove. So rather than take or poach people who, are already set in their ways, may want to do things according to the status quo, we want to break bounds, break the bias all the time. So let's hire people who have that notion and can fit into that culture. So a lot of the people are young. But again, a lot of these young people are coming from homes where they're used to seeing their father being the head. And it's something that you pick up. So usually people who have single mothers behave differently, both men and women. People who had a strong house mistress when they're in school, they behave differently. People who, especially those who did their national service before coming to us, who saw what women can do in the workplace, they also behave differently. But a lot of my challenges come from the young women I work with, unfortunately, whom I've worked with. They, again, are quick to take the word of an older man, or any man for that matter, or someone who they feel has been in the industry longer than you, and it's a woman, so it's okay, but not someone who took up a role just when they came in. It's very interesting. And those are some of the biases. I've had situations where we are on a production, and I give a camera operator an instruction, and indirectly, he says something that implies, but you don't know what you're talking about. Now, if a man had said it, would have been an issue. But all of a sudden, I have to pull out technical terms to prove that I know what I'm talking about, like overexposure and aperture. Why do I have to do that? It shouldn't have to be the case. Then you have the male presenters. A big part of my job is also trying to groom them to dress a certain way or maintain certain standards in the way they look, the way they speak. You're not a man. How can you tell us what to wear? How can you? And it doesn't help that my costumers are all women as well. Meanwhile, one of them actually sews men's clothes. But the fact that there are women telling them what to wear, how they must look, is a problem. But they don't have a problem passing through the makeup room for makeup. So, so there are things like that. You get on a stage, I'm moving outside. So you're going to moderate or you're going to host a show. As a woman, first of all, back to this pay thing that you mentioned, you're told that you're going to co-host with a man. But then you realize that even though you negotiated hard, the man got what he asked for and you didn't. Mm-hmm. Yours was slashed by like 1,000 cities. That's the first thing. Now, automatically, everybody, especially when the showrunners are men, everybody who has something to do with the event production tends to run whatever it is by the man first, and you just get the remnants of it. So if you're not strong or you don't understand your job or you don't understand how production works in the background, you end up looking like a nice, pretty decoration on the stage who is just there to complement the man. So, what I do now is, if it's either we're running it together or I'm running the show, and I'm not doing it. It's as simple as that. Because I'm not going to stand there and speak 2 words the whole night, whether you're paying me for it or not. Because those 2 words that I'll speak and the situation, environments in which you create for me to speak those 2 words affects whether I get the next gig or not. So regardless of whether you're paying me $1 million tonight or 1,000 cities, the point is that however I'm projected on that stage, it will affect the next gig or whether I get it or not. And those are hard decisions because sometimes you have to turn down gigs when you really wouldn't. And now, the last thing I'll speak about, poetry. Oh, that's one. I was raised in poetry by the late Professor Atukwe Okai. In many ways, he's been described as the father of spoken word on the continent. He was one of the people, for those who may not know who he was and what the history is, one of the people who had a chance to go and study in Russia, then, big conversation these days. But when he came back, this was under Nkrumah, and don't forget that there were tensions, if you know the history, in post-colonial Ghana about how much Russia, or the USSR at the time, this is Cold War era, was involved with our then president, Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, versus the Western powers. And remember, this is post-Second World War as well. So he was seen as one of Nkrumah's boys. And a lot of the things that he expressed or wanted to express, he put into his poetry, as did many other writers of the time. You can talk about Uno, Professor Kofi Anyido, of course, Professor Amatai Idu as well. A lot of the things that they wrote, they were political. because it was safer to put it into your work under creative license than to go and sit on a radio and speak it or to write it in a national newspaper. So I was raised by this gentleman as a godfather. I also had many opportunities to meet Ama Tayedu, and two of my poetic godmothers from afar happened to be Maya Angelou, right? And then there's also Pablo Neruda. Now these people perform their poetry reading. And I entered a space where the men had made it okay to drop lines and bars and, punch lines. And so I'd go onto a stage and people would say to me, yeah, oh, that was a nice one, but you have to memorize your work. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't understand. So I remember speaking to Prof one day. He says, look, you can perform however you want to perform. It just depends on how you do it. And when you decide how to do it, whoever you're performing to will accept it. And you also attract the people who understand your art. And so that's what I did. And that was one of the challenges. So people would not invite me to do gigs because I was going to read my poetry. They don't understand that reading it is, but I've gone through that poem for 1,000 times because there's some level of memorization. They also don't understand that I can actually memorize the poetry. I just choose not to perform it that way on stage because reading is also a skill. Reading and performance is also a skill on its own. Now, get this, in 2020, and I wished Professor Tukwe Okan were around to see that. After having been on 2 TEDx platforms in Ghana, I got a call from TED Global. And they said, I want you to do a performance for TED Women 2020. And this is virtual time because COVID was still raging, even though it's still there now. Then it was the height of it. And so they had a chance for the first time to have people and performers from all over the world virtually. So we did this production, had them on a Zoom call, and they're directing you. And one of my mentors as well, Pat Mitchell, who first woman to appear on CNN as an anchor, has done war reporting, she wears many hats. She's the founder of TED Women. She's the board chair of the Sundance Institute. All these wonderful things. And she lives in faraway US. I actually haven't met her personally. And I did this thing. Look, from then, the calls were just coming. And I saw. So it takes somebody in a faraway land, a brand that you feel is respectable enough, before you can now appreciate and pay attention to because I've been here all this time. But my male counterparts, I must say, before I move on, or I allow you to throw the next question, my male counterparts, when they do decide to read, by the way, it's never been an issue. Never. My male counterparts in poetry who memorize, on a day when they decide I'm reading, and they tell the audience, oh, I'm reading my poem, nobody has an issue with it. They still get the next gig, get paid more.
Really interesting dynamics and things to take from there. I'd like to come to you, Dapa Kun. As someone who is a non-conformist, there's this idea that once a woman is in a certain position, she needs to, it's a responsibility to, be a role model and to guide others. And so I want to know, is this something that you think about? Is this something that you, as a woman who is a non-conformist, think that it's even 10 times more your responsibility to be a role model to other women like you or women who need to grow confidence? And I'm speaking on confidence because for all of you sitting here, it took confidence to do what you have to do. And our culture doesn't allow young people, especially women, to be confident. So what is your take on that?
Okay, so one of the things I have been passionate about is talking to people and encouraging people and empowering people. But not until last year did I find out, or did I actually understand how I want to do it. So I didn't like the idea of a bunch of women sit in a fancy restaurant or a fancy place and then talk amongst ourselves. I mean, on a certain level. And then, I mean, it's good for networking, but I didn't feel like it was impactful. Because growing up, I think one of the things that helped me, again, direct opposite of Apioko's experience, 80% of the people who held my hand were women. So for me, it's challenging when people say, women are hard, women, no. This woman held my hand, passed me on to another woman, passed me on to another woman. That's how I came to be where I am. So, but I've always wanted a way to do it that wasn't that you had to wait. Because I think when my dad left, like you were saying, it does affect you. And it affected me for a very long time. And I lost my confidence. And I became really timid to the point that my teachers had to call my mom in and say, what's going on? And it went on for a very long time. But I realized that there's a time frame in which you can build someone's confidence, especially women. And if you're able to catch them in that time frame, it's easier for them to become whatever. So by the time you probably get to the university, you won't even feel traumatized when you're the only woman in the classroom because of that confidence you have. So something happened to me last year. I was organizing an interview. I needed someone on the team. So I shortlisted with the HR. The role is a predominantly male role, but I'm the only woman on my team. I mean, a team of managers. And even the people who work under me, I'm still the only woman. So I wanted a woman to take the role. So yeah, and then unfortunately for me, only one woman applied. So I put her on to come for the interview. This lady walks in and she's shaking. Even before sitting down, like I was just looking at her and it was like the room was heavy. So I paused, I stopped the interview and I said, are you okay? Do you want to take a break? Breathe. Should I turn off the AC? Listen, I did everything. But the girl was still not, even when she wasn't shaking anymore and she was relaxed, the way she was answering the questions, there was absolutely no confidence. Like, I don't know, I get very emotional when I'm talking about this because it broke me. And it made me feel like, yo, Ivy, you can't be sitting very far from such people and saying that you want women to be better. So after that interview, I told myself that, okay, it has to start from somewhere. And I believe in buildings and foundations. If the foundation isn't strong, the building doesn't hold. And so I just put up a tweet and said, I wanted to be able to help young people. I don't want to go to universities. No, you've already shaped up, and you can figure it out. But if we were able to get these girls in high school to understand that you can be confident and grow in a certain way, and you don't need a father figure, you don't need to hear a man say it before it makes sense. It can be from you, So for me, that was the reason I decided to start traveling out of Accra, because I feel like Accra people have a lot of privilege. So traveling out of Accra, I love traveling already. So now I have decided that anytime I'm out of town, I'll just look for the nearest high school, ask if it's okay to speak to the girls, and then just speak to them. I'm not going to tell you about what you should be in future. I'm just telling you that you're awesome, you're amazing, you can do whatever. I have been here. I'm not from when my dad left, it wasn't rich. So I can relate to certain things that they may be going through. And I went to one of these schools, and the most industrious girl in the school was the most timid. This girl wakes up at 3 a.m., cooks kinky. We all know the process of making kinky, right? It's a very long process. Prepares the kinky, then distributes it. So she has people who come pick it up in the village and then sell. It goes to the other towns and things like that. After that, she would make snacks like in Kati cake and other things to sell in school. And she would carry this and take it to school. But when I walked into the classroom and I was talking to them, she was sitting in some corner, like so timid. And I didn't know the story then, but I just saw a timid, shy girl. And I spoke to her and she said her name, and I'm an Ewe, so I was like, oh, so you're an Ewe in Eastern region. How does that feel? And I spoke her language, and she relaxed a bit. It was not until the end of the events that the teacher told me that she's the most industrious person, but she gives all the money to the men. Like all the money she makes, she still feels like she needs a man. She's 16. You know, she's 16. I mean, she feels like she needs a man to validate her, you know? And this girl, Charlie, and there's so many of them. And it's simply, and you realize that it's just because she doesn't even know that she's awesome. Like, she doesn't know that she's doing awesome. She has money at 16. She's able to make things and sell them. And the teacher says every season comes with a new idea and a new business that she tries to do. You get it? And she still sits in the corner, like, does she know? So I told, do you know how awesome you are? And she started crying. And it made me realize that, listen, no matter what, I mean, we all want to chase money. So yeah, sometimes I get busy, but it's something that I really, really think that we all should look at. Because we can't sit in certain places and say we want to break bias. When the foundation, which is the very young ones who are coming, are still struggling with even knowing themselves and knowing that they can be. I was out of Accra over the weekend. I was sitting at a very down-to-earth bar. I don't know if most of you know Big Millie's. Yes, it's very local setting and everything. And I was sitting there, and I was looking at the bar. So first of all, in the morning, I noticed a girl, haircut. And for those of you who don't know, when girls in Ghana usually have a haircut when they're in high school because they said they don't want them to look matured. So she has a haircut, and I needed you to understand because it's going to come up. She has a haircut. So first, the waiter tries to engage her in conversation. Oh, I know you. You come here with your mom. I'm listening. And I'm trying to make sure that he's not going off board in having the conversation because she obviously looks like an underage person. Charlie, me, I'll fight. I hate to see that men are taking advantage of younger girls. And I've never been that timid. Like, I can fight from when I was a child. I will fight you. You get it? So I was just paying attention, but she handled herself well. Said, oh, okay, nice, and she left. Then like an hour or two later, I'm sitting somewhere else, and she's sitting with her mom. Her mom says, oh, can you go to the bar? I have my change there. Take the change so we go. Then there are two guys standing at the bar, obviously drinking. So she goes to the waiter, says, oh, my mom says I should come for the change. The waiter says, hold on, I'm coming. And I'm just reading the room, and these two guys, hey, small girl, come. And they are touching her, and she's uncomfortable, but obviously afraid. So she tries to move away. So I was sitting with a friend, and I said, can you see what is going on? Like, I was ready to just jump and fight. And then the mother screamed from the back, so can't you see that she's underage? All the women here, can't you just ask anyone out? Must it be my small daughter? So the other one, two guys, one was embarrassed. So he told the other, let's go and apologize to her mom. Then the other one obviously saw that I was ready to get up and question him. So out of being ashamed or whatever he thought he was doing, he came to my table, Madam, Rasta, Empress, what's up? And I said, who are you fist bombing? If you don't clear off. And he left. By then, the other guy had gotten to the woman and apologized. This guy gets to the woman and says, but I don't know that she's underage. The one thing about having a young child and cutting her hair to show men that she's underage, that thing was there. And this guy still said, I didn't know she was underage. And then when the mother was getting upset, instead of you to shut up, he goes like, but I can take care of you. What's your problem?
Wow.
My friend had to hold me because by that time I was almost out of my chair because I was like, this guy needs to get it. I mean, growing up, that's one thing I'm grateful for my parents. As for how to know that this is wrong, this is right, don't let anybody get away with that. I got that. So I remember there was even this time a help was raping one of the girls that my grandma had adopted. And nobody believed the girl. I'm the one who, I was maybe age 12 or something. I'm the one who called a family meeting and said, this guy has been touching this girl in her sleep. If you guys are not going to do anything about it, I will. So I'm just telling you, in case you don't know, that as a family in this big house, this guy is taking advantage of this underage girl. I'm telling you, he's the help. He's not even like the family member. You cry, we are helping you. So don't come and then try to prey on the little ones. And that day was crazy. I was like, his sister said, used me as the prayer topic for maybe the next 1 month. Said, I am trying to get her brother thrown out of the house. The girl, as I'm speaking to you, I don't even know where the girl is. She eventually ran away. And then the next I heard, she was somewhere in Choco with 2 kids. And I felt so bad that even though I tried at that age to do something, I felt like I didn't do enough. You get it? And it's been a learning curve for me because now I want to always find an avenue to. So yeah, having to be a tomboy who is also always fighting for women, I get a lot of pushbacks because why, you think you are the boy who's coming to fight for it? I'm like, if you like. See, even if I can't fight, the eye I'll give you and the way I'll do my hand, you stand back. Do you get it? And so I think that for me, it's the confidence really that has taken me places. And I want to be able to, it's not that I think that, people have held me up, so I also have to hold someone. It's more of the fact that I'm seeing that, Charlie, we can't say we are growing a tree with no proper roots. These young people have to know how important they are, how amazing they are, how good they are, how much, how great they can be. They need to know. You get it? And for the men, you have to take any opportunity, especially for the young boys. You need to teach them. Like Apioko and Esnam rightly said, you need to teach them. They don't know. I mean, it was obvious that this guy didn't know that what he was doing was silly. And he went to the point, I can take care of you. Charlie, the woman who was sitting there, she didn't look like someone who couldn't take care of herself. And so the boys, Charlie, you need to teach the younger boys. I mean, the foundation there. I think that if we're going to break the bias, it has to start from when we were young or when people are younger, so that it's easier to grow with it. Because it's, Charlie,
It's a lot.
I get very emotional when it comes to confidence and empowering women, and because we have a very long way to go. Yes, a lot has been done, but it has to start from that place where you know that the person, it's there in your mind, no matter what you go through. It's always there that you can be great, so you should keep going. you know. So for me, that's it.
Thank you so much. And in these everyday stories that you have shared, it just brings to mind the fact that a huge number of the population are still thinking a certain way when it comes to women, the jobs that women should do, in the ways that they should approach women and talk to them on a daily basis. And so I really agree with you that, yes, we are breaking the bias, we are, doing something, but then we still need to reach the masses and get them to come to a certain way of thinking that would also help the women to progress. Because like you rightly said, we can't just have the girls having confidence and being able to speak up for themselves. We need the other genders to also, know, especially the men, being particular. Men should know how to behave, how to act, how to, just be better mannered, simply put. And so it's both ways, and there's still a long way to go. GH Boy has been very quiet, so I'm now coming to you. I'm very interested in the name that you chose for yourself. You did speak a bit about it when you were talking in your first, in the first few minutes of the conversation. But when I first heard it, again, it comes to biases and stereotypes. I was expecting a certain look to appear, and I'm like, okay, I mean, this is interesting. So I know that it's very intentional. But what about looking at it from the point of view that in trying to break the bias, you are actually using the bias. You are actually leaning on the idea of being powerful and being a man. Like power, the ultimate power is manhood, is being a man. That's what you are leaning towards. Have you thought about that, and how do you reflect on that, and how you use it in the space that you find yourself?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Absolutely, it's the exact thing you said. For me, in choosing that name, I first thought of the irony of it, and the fact that what you hear and what you'd envision and then what you see would be completely different. So when I was deciding to take that name on, I kind of jokingly thought about, so wind back. There's this misconception that female DJs are not as good as guy DJs, obviously, because guys have been in the industry for all this time and we've just sort of hopped on. And so I thought it would be fun to sort of trick people using that bias kind of against people, and it's sort of to trigger people into the conversation, like why, like you asked, why that name? Because if I had gone on to say I'm DJ Ghana Girl, it speaks for itself. But if I'd gone to say I'm a female, I'm a grown-ass woman, saying my name is Ghana Boy, you would ask yourself why. And then I can talk to you about the sexism and the patriarchy and all of that, because you've asked why didn't you go with Ghana Girl. And another thing for me also has been the fact that there's been something kind of powerful about having that name, especially in the industry. I remember learning in high school about female authors way back in the day, disguising their names, like their pen names were male names, like Richard Sam or something Smith, and they were actually females, but after years and years went on, their work became more renowned, and it went to show that, oh, these were females kind of disguising themselves as men. And so I thought, when I remembered that, I thought I could kind of adopt the same concept. And in this modern day, it's been, safe to say, it's been interesting because of my look, and obviously I'm very feminine in how I present myself, but there's also the other side to me that's very tough and very, somewhat in your face and go-getter, rebellious. And so I just thought that name was perfect fit. And it gets your attention. So the surprise element also.
And just before I wrap up, just want to ask a follow-up question. Is so the name has been an advantage to you in the sense
Definitely.
that someone would hear your name and think it's a man, so they give you the job.
And they book me. Yeah, and
So-
surprise.
Have there been times where you show up as a lady and they say, "Oh, you can't do the work, so leave"?
So there have been times, no, that's not actually ever happened, thank God. I don't know what I'll do if that happened. But there has been times where, because I am Ghana boy, I'm now known in Accra as the grown woman calling herself a boy. And because of the fact that now people do know me as a female DJ, there have been times where I'm not put at a certain set time. So in the industry, the headliners or the bigger DJs or more established DJs would perform later, or they're the headliner, right? So the not so experienced DJs, or whatever you call it, not as established, will be put earlier.
Beginning.
And there have been times where I feel I would be put on later, but it didn't happen. I was just put on first. So, Ghana man time, people don't necessarily come in early, so they would miss my set. Never mind, I still get paid. But it goes to show that maybe had I been a guy, I would have been pushed up. And had another female DJ been there, she would have been put beneath me. So there's been that. But for the most part, it's been a lot of positive feedback because people somewhat get it. They get like, "Oh, but you're a woman." And I'm like, "Yeah." So why are you surprised by that? I'm a woman and I'm a DJ and I'm not doing bad. And so it's been more advantageous than it has been, than it has bitten me in my ass. Excuse my French. But yeah, I'm very happy that I chose to go along with it and I've stuck to it. And despite people's opinions about why it's controversial, you're a woman, call yourself Ghana girl, it's worked out. So it's proven my point. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
It's working out for each and every one of you in the spaces that you find yourselves. And I must say that it's a privilege to be a woman, and it's exciting to be a woman within this time, this era where a lot more women are coming out of their shelves and doing their own thing and taking the space if they have to fight for it. But one thing I'd like us to reflect on while we leave is that there is another side to the story when it comes to women, and there has been a neglect of the everyday Ghanaian woman's story when it comes to feminism, when it comes to breaking the bias, and it's something that we as people in certain positions need to reflect on and see how we can also invite these women to share their stories on how they are able to make it happen. And talk about the yam sellers who have been selling yam even before Gold Coast became Gold Coast and Ghana became Ghana. The pepper sellers, the cleaners, the people that help us to be able to get to work early. Some of us have people who help us. These women, their stories also need to be heard. And so while we fight for the people who are close to us, let's see how we can go outside of our brackets and fight for the women who are also doing their own thing in their own spaces. And they are mostly in a demographic that is less educated and also less spoken about. Thank you so much for spending the last few minutes with us. And it's been interesting hearing your stories. I am particularly excited to, well, I don't know if excited is the right word, but I'm very happy that the conversation has dwelled on both sides of the coin, be it our own gender and then men and other genders that exist, and how the bias is, has established itself and we are trying to break it. And I wish us all the best in whatever we find ourselves doing. Whenever there's news about you guys, let's rave about it. And yeah, thank you also to everyone who has stayed to listen to us. And thank you to Alliance Française and Nana Akosia Hansen for inviting us. So I would like to wish us all a good night. And every day is a celebration of women, but then we would meet again next year on the 8th of March. Thank you. Okay.
This has been a great discussion, right? Intense. And please, a huge round of applause to our moderator, Elizabeth Johnson, and our panelists, Apioko, Ivy, Ghana Boy, Esinam. Thank you so much. So that's it for our evening. It's been great having you here. There's so much more that's happening at Alliance Française, so please do follow us on our social media and also on our website. We've got concerts coming up. We've got a jazz festival coming up. We have so many things coming up. So please follow us and make sure you don't miss out on any of that. And I would like to say for the last time, Happy Women's Day. We are proud of all of you. We are proud of all of you. Thank you all so much for staying. Have a good evening. Bye.